Hey, it's Thursday, it's noon. You're watching CBC News BC. I'm Tanya Fletcher here in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Here are the top stories we are following right now. The province is asking for more resources from other countries now to help deal with BC's escalating wildfire situation. The province has requested 6-unit crews. That amounts to roughly 180 specialized firefighters, along with some incident management teams and fire behavior specialists, all the way from Australia and elsewhere. Now, right now, BC has deployed more than 500 of its own firefighters, and the province says this latest request is in anticipation of more fire activity to come.
We are preparing for the possibility that wildfire starts will increase in an accelerated manner from this day forward. And so while we are currently in a comfortable and confident position with our wildfire resources, we do want to be prepared. And so by being proactive in our request for additional resources.
As of this morning, there are 149 wildfires burning across BC. Most of them are up north in the Caribou and Northeast fire centers. 2 evacuation orders, 3 alerts are in effect, but at this point, no residential properties are affected. Well, heat warnings, meanwhile, have been lifted across Vancouver Island and Metro Vancouver with slightly cooler temperatures today, but different story in the interior. More than a dozen heat warnings are still in effect for some areas of the south. Metro Vancouver has also ended its air quality advisory. That's been in effect for just about a week now. And starting tomorrow at noon, that province-wide campfire ban will kick in, of course, with the exception of the Haida Gwaii Forest District. We have a couple of earthquakes to tell you about that hit this morning. They rattled the coast of Vancouver Island. The first one came in around 8:10 this morning. It was measuring at 6.4 magnitude, followed by 2 smaller ones at 4.3 and 4.9 respectively. As mentioned, the first one struck at 8:10 a.m. and then the next 2 happened not even half an hour later. The good news, no tsunami risk at this point. Now, there have been multiple quakes over the past week or so, a few hundred kilometers off the west coast of the island. Turns out Earthquakes Canada says we're currently experiencing a swarm of them here along BC. Well, there's been another deadly highway crash, killing another family. 4 people have died in the southern interior. This one happened on Highway 3 through Karamias. RCMP say 2 cars were involved in this one with a tractor trailer. It happened just before noon. 4 adults of an extended family were found dead at the scene. The people in the other car were not harmed, but it is the latest in at least 4 crashes in BC in the past week alone that have claimed a total of 14 lives. 4 people were killed last Friday in a crash on Highway 6 in the West Kootenays. A family of 3, including a baby, died in Agassiz Tuesday morning. And another crash happened. It killed 3 people in Invermere on Tuesday night. And finally, Canada and the U.S. have reached an agreement in principle just in the last few hours to modernize the Columbia River Treaty. The treaty was inked in 1961. It regulates the waterway that flows from southeastern BC down into Washington state. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the deal is a milestone. It'll allow officials to update the treaty now. And above all, they said it'll ensure continued flood risk management and cooperation on the hydropower along the river. He says this agreement will also look at new ways to balance ecosystem health and Indigenous cultural values as well. That's it for now. I'm Tanya Fletcher. You're watching CBC News BC here in the Vancouver newsroom. BC Today is up next with Amy Bell. See you later.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. The province's Overdose Prevention Steering Committee has made several recommendations for university campuses to adopt this fall, following the tragic death of Sydney McIntyre-Sturco from an overdose at the University of Victoria this past January. But will this be enough to protect students? And we'll hear all about the do's and don'ts of wildlife photography, and we want to know if you've ever gotten the perfect pic in the great outdoors. I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thank you for joining us today on radio, TV, and on live stream. You can call us now on our top story. What supports do students need as they arrive on campus this fall? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And you can always email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Heat and risk of lightning could lead to more wildfire starts in the province, and BC's Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, Bowinn Ma, gave an update on the situation earlier today.
Over the last week, we have seen heat warnings issued for many regions of the province, and dozens of heat records have been broken throughout British Columbia. Summer has truly arrived, and I know many British Columbians have been enjoying the warm, sunny weather that we've been experiencing. While some regions have seen heat warnings lifted in recent days, we continue to experience hot weather across the province, and that is expected to extend for many areas into next week. Although the cooler weather conditions of May and June have offered a welcome reprieve so far, the recent heat has brought with it drier conditions, and as a result, the BC Wildfire Service is implementing a province-wide campfire ban effective noon tomorrow on July 12th. This means open burns of any kind, except those licensed for prescribed burns, will be prohibited everywhere in British Columbia with the exception of Haida Gwaii due to its unique climate. With the current heat event and forecasted conditions, as well as the persistent underlying drought conditions that we see in many parts of the province, it is possible, and we are preparing for the possibility that wildfire starts will increase in an accelerated manner from this day forward. And so while we are currently in a comfortable and confident position with our wildfire resources, we do want to be prepared. And so by being proactive in our request for additional resources, we can ensure that that lag that it often takes for additional resources to come in from out of province doesn't impact our ability to protect communities and protect British Columbians.
That was BC's Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, Bowinn Ma. And a new wildfire in central BC has triggered an evacuation order for the northeast corner of the district of Wells. And for more on this, we are now joined by CBC reporter Yasmin Ganya. Hello, thanks for joining us today. Yasmin, what can you tell us about this current situation in the district of Wells?
Yeah, parts of the district are under evacuation order while other parts are under evacuation alert. The district of Wells is near the historic gold rush town of Barkerville in the Caribou district of central BC. And last night, the order and alert were issued because of the Cornish Mountain wildfire. Officials said it was there was a threat to life and safety, and residents affected by the order were ordered to leave immediately. Early indications suggest that the fire was sparked by lightning.
Okay. And how many people have been affected by this evacuation order so far?
Yeah, so no residential properties have been affected, which is good. But the mayor of the district says the evacuation order covers a small mine site of about 10 workers, as well as recreation lakes in the backcountry. Now, the alert affects about 350 properties, and that includes homes, businesses, as well as crown lots.
Okay. And, you know, as we've been talking about all week, we're coming off this heat event. Does the weather look to be cooperating in that area right now?
And on top of the heat, we've also seen persistent drought conditions across BC. So crews, helicopters, and as well as air tankers are currently working to put out the fire near the Wells area. The mayor of the district says the fire is still out of control, but is being held. And the important thing is that it's not currently moving towards the community. If we take a broader look at the province, there are about 150 wildfires currently burning, mostly in the Caribou and Northeast regions, and about 30 actually started in the last 24 hours. So officials are reminding people to practice fire safety and as well as to adhere to fire bans.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And unfortunately, I'm sure this is a topic we will be talking about many times this summer. CBC reporter Yasmin Ganya. And it is 12:11, and this is BC Today. And those magnificent sights of the North Shore Mountains from Vancouver could become a little less prominent. City Council has voted to remove some of the city's view cones in an effort to add housing supply. ABC Councillor Peter Meisner spoke to the Early Edition Stephen Quinn this morning.
These are really adjustments, Stephen. We're not talking about, people's views of the North Shore Mountains being gone. The frame is just maybe changing a little bit to accommodate more buildings, particularly rental housing.
How much affordable housing is actually going to be built here, and how many of this is going to be high-rise condos?
Well, many buildings will be high rises. We have very expensive land in Vancouver, and that's why we have so many high rises in the city. But the city has really strong policies around inclusionary below market rentals. So we have rental buildings that have 20% below market. This is going to allow them to have proportionately more below market housing, as the building will be able to add a few more stories onto it. In terms of strata housing, which is not super popular right now, it's not really being built due to the market. Many of those projects, particularly in the West End, which will be impacted by these changes, have 20% social housing as a requirement of the project. So this is going to increase the supply of affordable housing, as well as just housing across the board.
How is this not a gift to developers?
It's not a gift to developers because they have to supply that increased level of affordable and rental housing, as well as increasing the number of CACs they would have to pay if it's a strata project. And those are community amenity contributions that go to things like childcare, community centers, pools, etc.
In the aftermath of Sydney McIntyre Sturco's tragic death from a fentanyl overdose at the University of Victoria, the province's Overdose Prevention Steering Committee has made several recommendations for university campuses to adopt this fall. In addition to student education, the province will provide all 25 BC universities and colleges with easy-to-use nasal naloxone this fall, and is requiring schools to make the kits readily available and accessible to students to help prevent overdoses. I spoke with Post-Secondary Minister Lisa Baer earlier today about keeping students safe. So describe to me, what are these recommendations that the committee has made for campuses coming up this fall?
So our government's goal is to keep students safe on campus, and that's been my goal since I received the ministry earlier this spring, whether it be, from racism or sexual violence, gender-based violence, or from overdoses. And so our goal is to keep students safe. After the tragic death of Sydney McIntyre Sturco and her family's very passionate pleas with the province to make sure that we are keeping students safe, I immediately called all the presidents of the post-secondaries together and formed a steering committee to help implement province-wide guidelines around overdoses on campus.
And what are some of the ways that these guidelines will be implemented to help the students?
So we have the steering committee is recommending a number of guidelines. The ones that came out yesterday are some of the quick, immediately implementable guidelines. That's things like ensuring that naloxone is available on campus, ensuring that there are alerts shared with students and faculty and staff on campus if there are overdoses and a toxic drug supply on campus. These kind of quick actions that can immediately be implemented. The steering committee is also developing medium and long-term guidelines, which will be in place for the fall in anticipation of return to school in September.
And going forward, will this be, I suppose, revisited and more guidelines perhaps put in place or more supports put in place if needed in the future?
Well, the guidelines, our goal is to have the guidelines in place for the fall, in anticipation of the return of school in spring. And so while a number of guidelines may take longer to implement, one of the recommendations from Sydney's family had been that, for example, every building on campus has a unique address, so the building is easier to find. So we can put that guideline in place in time for fall, but the implementation may take a little longer, obviously, as we look at each unique building on each campus all across the province. So we have the goal of putting all the guidelines in place for the fall to be implemented.
And is this enough to keep students safe when they return back to universities and college campuses?
Absolutely. We are all working together to make that happen. The entire sector is incredibly engaged right now. We have all 25 post-secondaries engaged, the Public Health Office, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, everybody, our government, we are all working in partnership to ensure that we're doing everything we can to put in place guidelines that will keep students safe come the fall. Now, there were policies and guidelines in place, but as we saw, they weren't enough. And so we have an entire sector engaged to make sure that we're putting in the tools that students and faculty and staff need to keep students safe and their staff safe coming this fall.
Minister, I thank you so much for your time today. Much appreciated.
Thank you. It was really nice to talk to you.
You as well. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Post-secondary Minister Lisa Baer. So we want to hear from you. What supports do we need in place to keep students safe? And how do you talk to your children and young adults about the dangers of overdose deaths? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now is Isabel Easton, Director of Campaigns and Community Relations for the UVic Student Society. Hi, Isabel.
Hello.
So how do you feel about the recommendations that were announced yesterday and you just heard from Minister Baird?
Yeah, so the 4 recommendations mainly fall under the scope of clarity on emergency services, expanding awareness of toxic drug alerts, enhancing consistent access to naloxone, and also overdose prevention awareness. So around those scopes, we found that in some of those cases, it's scary. It's honestly a little bit terrifying that some of these guidelines weren't in place previously to yesterday or to being developed when the committee was formed in May. We are very glad that the ministry, as well as the province, is taking steps towards improving the safety for students on campuses when it comes to harm reduction and substance-related health. And we are really glad that these steps are being taken, but we also realize and recognize that it's going to take buy-in from more than just the Ministry of Post-Secondary Institutions and Future Skills, as well as the Ministry of Health, but it will also take buy-in from the whole province and the Ministry of Finance. And we really hope that the ministries and the province continue to move in a direction that is supporting students and that is supporting the members of our communities that use substances and protect their safety first.
And we do want to hear from our audience about the ways that they're talking to the young people in their lives about the risk of overdose. I invite you now to call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell or email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. Isabel, you mentioned it was almost surprising that many of these measures weren't already in place. And, it strikes me that this toxic drug crisis isn't new. It's something that we've been aware of for so long. What actions are already underway, perhaps on your campus, that have made ways to ensure student safety?
Yeah, so there's a few things that the University of Victoria's Student Society, specifically that I represent,
Right.
has been doing since 2017. So a public health emergency was declared in 2016, and following that, the Safer Use program was established by our student society, and it's been providing naloxone training workshops. So that's a workshop that teaches anybody how to use injectable naloxone, when to use it, how to give breaths, the steps of identifying an opioid overdose versus the overdose of, say, a stimulant. And these workshops have been running pretty much monthly, consistently since 2017, with the exception of a few interruptions due to COVID as well as capacity issues.
Right.
On the university side of things, UVic made a few announcements. I believe a couple weeks ago now, they're installing 89 naloxone boxes, which will be an emergency safety supply on every residence floor in the common space in that on that residence floor in those buildings, in the lounges in those buildings. So they will be accessible to students in an emergency, and they will also be hooked up to kind of an alarm system where when you open that box, it will dial campus security as well as 911, signaling that someone is having a medical emergency.
Okay, wonderful. And I'm curious, maybe you could speak to this. What effect did Sydney's death have on the students at UVic? Did it cause more people to become involved with preventing overdoses? Did it perhaps spark some more discussions about staying safe?
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that is difficult to touch on, especially because we're talking about the life of a student. And
it is so awful that such a tragedy is so often the impetus to take action and to get people talking about things.
Absolutely, and we're really glad to see all of the changes that are coming, as I said before, and all of these announcements that the ministry is put forward. But we're deeply saddened and disappointed that it took the life of a student, the life of a daughter, the life of a kid to make these steps come into place. But from a student's perspective and engagement wise, we have seen more engagement regarding harm reduction initiatives, regarding our Safer Use program. We often, prior to May, had a difficult time getting students to engage with our naloxone training programs. We would be at half capacity or less most of the time when we would run those monthly workshops. Our previous workshop that we had in June was double of our capacity. We actually had to fill an overflow space, and we trained 57 students that day on how to use injectable naloxone and help save a life.
Wow. What do you think are discussions that students and their families could be talking about before they arrive at university? And I have asked our audience, and I still am asking for them to join this discussion. Just how do you talk to the young people in your life about overdose prevention and drug use before they arrive on campus?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Actually, I had a meeting this morning with a member of the staff at Carleton University in Ontario.
Okay.
The McIntyre-Starco family identified that university as kind of the poster child for safer use programming and for harm reduction initiatives. And so we as the Student Society took it upon ourselves to take that and learn from them, and had a meeting with them this morning. And what they had to say was that one of the things that we should truly be centralizing more, and that harm reduction should be shifting to, especially in the perspective of the young people in our lives, and people who don't necessarily recognize that they maybe have a substance use problem or problems in their life that are related to substance use, is substance use health, and framing it as your health as a whole, holistically, and how substance use factors into that health. So often what we'll see for students is they'll have the mindset of I don't have an addiction. I don't need treatment. I don't need harm reduction initiatives. That's not who I am. And it kind of gets pushed under the blanket of like the college lifestyle.
Right.
And what we see there is that students will often come into counseling or into our peer support centers or to their mental health professionals and come to them with issues of I have trouble sleeping or I have anxiety. And the way that those students choose to cope with that is sometimes through substance use and then analyzing how that can overall impact a person's health and
Right.
how dependency on some of those substances can create kind of this feedback loop where now your health problems are not being aided by your substance use, but are actually being deepened by it.
Right.
I think that this perspective of substance use health and approaching the youth in your life and all the youth around you with the perspective that their health matters and that their health is important. And then framing how substance use fits into that and what a healthy relationship with substances can look like.
And that's such a valid, an important point, framing it in that way, because for a lot of university students, this is the first time, if they're living on campus, it's their sort of first taste of being an adult and getting that taste of freedom. And it can be overwhelming, but there can also be a lot of shame if they feel they do have a problem. I'll read you an email from that we received from Garth Mullins. He's a board member of Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users, or VANDU. He writes, I've trained hundreds of young people on how to use naloxone. It's a great opportunity to talk about toxic drugs. Do you find that the sort of the training or talking about it in a health sense sort of provides a pathway to have a broader discussion about the different toxic drugs that are out there?
Absolutely. It opens up the field to talk about all the substances that an individual may have come in contact with or may know about, and really answer questions about them on a level that is both welcoming and educational and informative without being so taboo or having that kind of stigma behind it,
Right.
because you are in a health setting and you're with professionals that are already talking to you about substance use and are talking about overdose and are not going to judge if you have questions about, say, how to use opioids safely,
Right.
or things like that. Those environments really open up the ability for both students and community members, and especially youth that maybe feel under pressure or feel like they are unsure of who they should come to.
Right.
One other thing that kind of comes up when it comes to substance use health is when you have a cold or when you're ill, you know that you should go to the doctor.
Right.
And when you have a health issue, you know that you should see a counselor or a therapist. But when you have a substance related issue, there's not really a clear definition of who you're supposed to approach.
Right.
So I think that those spaces create that opportunity of a place that you can go to ask those questions and have those conversations, and not necessarily put off the signal that I need support, but just start that conversation. And that the starting of that conversation is really important.
Isabel, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. And again, sorry that these conversations are the result of somebody's tragic death on campus, but stay safe. I appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You as well. Isabel Easton is the Director of Campaigns and Community Relations with UVic Student Society. This is BC Today on CBC. We're on Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC. You can find us on YouTube at CBC Vancouver and on the CBC News app. The CBC News with Robert Zimmerman is next.
Good afternoon. BC's Minister of Mental Health and Addiction says the government does not agree with a recommendation from Dr. Bonnie Henry on expanding the Safer Supply program. Henry is recommending BC allow access to alternatives to toxic, unregulated drugs without a prescription. Minister Jennifer Whiteside says the province will not go in the direction of what she calls non-medical models of distributing medications. A 6.4 magnitude quake was part of an ongoing swarm of quakes this morning off BC's coast. The first and largest occurred just after 8 this morning, 183 kilometers southwest of Port Alice. A total of 13 earthquakes with a preliminary magnitude of around 4 or greater have now been detected in BC waters since the start of July. And 4 family members are dead after a crash on Highway 3 in Karamias. RCMP say 2 cars were involved in the crash with a semi just before noon yesterday. It closed part of the highway for several hours. The victims' names have not been released. And now the forecast. Heat warnings continue for many southern sections of the province. On the north coast, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon with a high of 16. Highs reaching 24 with strong winds and sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a sunny with a high of 24 as well. Highs up to 36 with sunshine and local smoke in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a high of 36 and sunny. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, warm and sunny this afternoon with highs up to 27 inland. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Rob. And Rob, we're going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of getting just that perfect wildlife photo. Do you have any close encounters with great beasts that you'd like to share?
I do not, Amy.
Come on.
No.
No bears
I don't.
running onto the tennis courts?
I saw a coyote actually on Kitts Beach the other day. That was about it.
There you go. Why don't you snap
Does
a
that
pic?
count? No.
You know what? I, as always, will take what I can get with you, Rob.
Okay, you're welcome. Anytime, Amy.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay.
And we have lots of great stories coming up this afternoon, and Gloria Makarenko will join us now with what's on the coast today.
Hi there, Amy. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and I hope you can join us for On the Coast this afternoon because we are going to talk all about summer love. Our story producer, Missy Johnson, is launching a new column, and it's all about dating. We got a question for you. Who pays? Who pays on a first date, for example, or who pays for the groceries or the concert, that kind of thing. We'll hear about how people approach finances while they're dating. And it's Thursday, so our Soapbox Social panel, Mo Amir and Kyla Lee, they're going to be here to take us through the big news stories of the week. So I hope you can join us between 3 and 6 for On the Coast.
Now, summer is the time of year when we're out hiking and biking and camping, and that's often when we're seeing wildlife in their natural environment. And the BC SPCA has a photo contest on right now where you can send in your favorite wildlife photo for a chance to be featured on SPCA swag. Well, there is a right way to photograph wildlife, and there are definitely many wrong ways. We want to hear from you. Tell us about your BC wildlife encounters, and do you have any tips on how to photograph wildlife safely? That is the key. Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. I have 2 guests joining me today. Joining us now is Brandon Broderick, a wildlife photographer, and he is joining us from Tumbler Ridge. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Hey, How are you?
I'm doing well. And joining me on set is Nadia Zanakis, Specialist, Wild Animal Welfare and BC SPCA Science and Policy Division. Hello, Nadia.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks so much to you both for coming on the show. Nadia, this is the 17th year that that you've held the contest. So tell us more, I guess, about what it supports and what kind of photos you're actually looking for.
Absolutely. This is our 16th annual year running the contest, and it's a fantastic way for anyone in British Columbia to get involved. And you're contributing in two ways. One is by providing your photos to us that we use in our education and our advocacy campaigns that are really valuable and really important for our work. And you can also support us by paying to vote for your favorite photos. And all of the proceeds from this contest go directly to our wild animal rehabilitation facility on Vancouver Island called Wild Ark.
And we do have 3 photos from last year's winner. And for our listening audience, tell us more about these ones. So I believe the first one is from June Cezaz.
Yes, so this was our winner for the wild settings category. So we have different categories of winners. And you can see these stunning snow geese kind of in this pink, hazy background. I believe it was taken on a time lapse on a shoreline. It's just a stunning photograph. So that was our winner from last year for the wild settings category. And we also have 2 other categories that winners can be part of, which is the People's Choice Award and the backyard habitats.
And I believe we have this one from Andrew Hardin. Just 2 adorable little raccoons. And I think raccoons often get a bad rap, but I'm a huge fan, and I think they're adorable. And this photo of them just hanging out in this tree together with their little paw, which looks like a hand, is just adorable. So is this the fan favorite?
This one was the winner for backyard habitats.
Oh,
So this was
backyard,
taken in
okay.
a backyard, and they're juvenile raccoons, so very cute to look at.
Adorable. I believe we've got one more, though. This is from Annabelle Wee.
Yes, this is our People's Choice Award winner, which means it's the photo that won with the most votes from the public.
Okay.
And it is of a short-eared owl taken along the dike system in Richmond, British Columbia. I think it's just a stunning photo of the habitat of straight on of the owl, and it was very popular with a lot of people.
I can understand why. It's just, you get a great shot of an owl like this one, just standing on this log with this intense eye contact with the photographer. You just sort of feel like you're there. And that, to me, when you see these wildlife photos, you do feel that immediate connection, like you're there and that the animals somehow seeing through you. Brandon, you won this year's Canadian Geographic's Wildlife Photographer of the Year. What did it take to win the contest? We've seen 3 that could have been in contention there. So what did it take for you to win?
Just to clarify, I won the Photographer of the Year, not the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. That was won by JC LeMay.
Okay,
and
sorry.
that contest actually ends at the. No, that's fine. Yeah. So I mean, just getting out there and being in the moment is you're trying to capture something special that isn't seen by many people, and contest photos are won by photos that really connect with people. It seems like there's just something special to them. So just get out there and photograph whatever you can, whatever's local to you, and whatever you connect with, and you'll have a better chance of taking a photo that connects with others.
And tell us, if you can, just about a memorable, wildlife experience that you've had while photographing.
I've had so many. It's really hard to
I can
to
imagine.
pick. I think lynx are my favorite species to spend time with. I've spent hours in the wild with wild lynx. I've had them walk up to within 10 feet of me and fall asleep, and I've been able to hear them purr. I've watched them dream while they sleep. It's just, I don't know, whenever a wild animal allows you into its kind of circle of trust, it's a special feeling. Obviously, you don't want to get too close to certain species, the larger predator species, but there are safe ways to go about it. But yeah, lynx, by far my favorite. I've also spent some time with a mountain lion and her 2 kittens, which was another one that's going to be hard to top for sure.
I can imagine just gaining that trust, especially, with a mother. But I would think too that is something you have to be very careful of, not putting an animal where it feels like it's in a situation that it has to be defensive. We'll take a call now from Kirsten in Saanich. Hi, Kirsten. Do you have a memorable wildlife encounter?
I sure do. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course. Thanks for calling in.
So 4 years ago during the pandemic, my mother and I went up through one of the more reputable guides through Telegraph Cove up to a place called Brackendale, up through the northern coast of Vancouver Island. And we got to see a grizzly bear with her then 2 cubs that the guides had nicknamed Lenore. And my mother got this amazing shot of Lenore and her 2 cubs trailing behind her as they scarpered over the tidal flats there as they were digging for grubs and for the roots of the sedges, as well as then climbing into a nearby tree to snack on Pacific crab apples. And the only thing that you could hear at that point was silence from the guests on the boat, as well as the babies climbing in the tree and the mother eating the crab apples.
Incredible. And how close were you approaching the bear to get these photos?
So at that point, we were pretty far away. My mother got the photo from about 10 meters away, but at one point we were able to get between 3 to 4 meters away from the grizzly. But I want to point out that the grizzly was very used to people.
Okay.
So to that end, I would like to remind everyone that because the grizzly was used to everybody and because it was all Canadians on that boat, or at least British Columbian folks on that boat, we all knew to keep our hands to ourselves, to remain quiet, and not to do anything that would potentially make the grizzly feel threatened.
And I thank you for the call, but I especially thank you for making that point, Kirsten, and I'll throw that to both our guests. We do see a lot of social media activity where people seem to be putting themselves very much in harm's way in that effort to get a perfect shot of bears or moose or various other wildlife that could cause them tremendous harm. And we do, in fact, see that harm sometimes. How do you sort of make sure you remind people that part of wildlife photography is having that respect and keeping that space? Nadia, with the contest, I'm sure this is something that you need to remind people of.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have contest rules, and this is all covered kind of in the contest rules. If I do see a photo that seems to be quite close, I will actually reach out to the entrant and just get the camera details to confirm it was taken with a long lens camera. They were a certain distance away. I will add that information to the entry so other people looking at it will know that and know that it wasn't taken at a close distance to the animal. We also do provide kind of educational resources on our website as well on kind of recommended distances, how to minimize harm to yourself, the animals, and the environment while you're out in nature to make sure everyone's safe and can have a good time.
Wonderful. And we still would love to hear from our audience today. If you have any memorable wildlife experiences that you've managed to keep or get a photo of, call us today, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Let us know your wildlife encounters, but also your tips for safely photographing nature. Brandon, I'll ask you, what are some do's and don'ts that people could know just about getting that perfect shot? I know in the past I've seen photos, or I've seen something I want to take a picture of that's incredible, it's majestic, and I think it's going to be the most incredible shot, and then when I look at it, it's terrible. So how do you prevent that? What are some tips?
So you want the animal walking towards you. That's pretty key for wildlife photos, or at least facing you. Photos of animals kind of walking or running away show that the animal was, not enjoying the situation and had to leave. So with ethical wildlife photography, you want to have, no effect on the animal's behavior at all.
Right.
Every once in a while, you're going to scare an animal away. It's not the end of the world. Just don't keep pursuing it and keep pushing it further and further. These animals, they only have so many calories and they don't want to burn those in, wasting their time. Like, it's tough out there for them. So we want to make it as easy as possible. One thing I like to do with bears in particular, especially on a roadside, I like to kind of see which direction the bear is heading. And then I will position myself ahead of the bear with lots of space. So that allows the bear to decide how close it wants to get. Obviously, if it starts to get too close, you move away or you stay in your vehicle. That's obviously the safest option. And you just want maybe a bit of eye contact. You want the face of the animal to lead you through the frame, typically, just composition wise. Zoom in if you can, but it is also nice to sometimes include a photo of an animal that's kind of smaller in the frame of the photo to show the habitat that it's in. Again, if you're on a roadside, that's not always possible. The side of the road isn't always the most scenic location, but you do what you can and just, have fun with it. Just get out there and try new stuff. Like with digital stuff these days, we can, you can make mistakes, learn from them really quickly and, try something else.
Yeah, for sure. Have you ever had, an encounter where you did feel unsafe though?
No, actually, every once in a while, a black bear will, kind of, swat at the ground, and that basically lets me know the photo shoot is over, and I leave them alone. I did have one that kind of ran at me one day, but it wasn't the bear's fault, and I had been safely photographing this bear for quite a while, but a cyclist actually came up out of nowhere and parked right next to the bear. The bear freaked out and just ran, and it just happened to be kind of in my direction. Thankfully, it turned and there was no conflict, but so far I've been able to talk my way out of most situations. I tend to just kind of talk to the animals when I'm photographing them. They're a lot smarter than we think they are. They know we're there. There's no point trying to, army crawl around and try and, sneak around. The last thing you want to do is surprise an animal, especially these bears. So I like to let them know I'm there and, just talk to them with a calm voice and also try to kind of project some calmness, because I feel like if we're stressed out around them, they pick up on that. They get stressed out. I don't know if there's any science to back that, but that seems to be what I've experienced.
Oh, I think absolutely. I'm sure there is science on that, because I've heard so many people that work, in your area, but also just, you can see that in any animal that you're with. They do sort of pick up on what you're giving them. We'll get a call now from Wendy Lou in Campbell River. Wendy Lou, have you had any wildlife encounters you want to share?
Yes, I do. This goes back to 1968. I'm about 15 years old, and I'm riding my horse bareback between a little town called Pouskoupi or Pouskapay on my way up to Dawson Creek. So it's a back road, gravel road, and I'm coming up to a corner. I know there's a swampy area on my right, and I turn the corner, and there's this something coming down the road towards me. And I couldn't figure out what it was at first. And as I got closer, I recognized this the biggest beaver I'd ever seen. And we just kept going on our path, and the beaver kept coming on its side of the road. And now this beaver was, I don't know, I'd swear it was like 3 feet off the ground. Its tail was straight out behind it, and it was huge. And we passed each other on the road. My horse didn't blink an eye. The beaver didn't blink an eye. I maybe blinked a few eyes. But it was absolutely amazing. And all I could think of was, he must be headed for the swamp. But where he came from, I have no idea.
Oh, who knows? When you're a beaver that size, maybe you just get to go wherever you like. Wendy Lou, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Really did a lot to get in my mind of this massive animal just taking you and your horse. Well, not your horse, but you by surprise. We also have a call now from Doug in Salmon Arm. And Doug, I believe you have a question for Brandon.
Hi there. How's your day going?
My day is fantastic. How is yours?
It's going well. The sun's out. It's like 35 degrees. I'll go jump in the lake later on, so life's good.
That sounds perfect. What was your question for Brandon, Ken, or Doug?
I was wondering if your guest collaborates with other wildlife photographers ever. I mean, I have a friend who is actually one of Canada's top wildlife photographers. His name's Johnny Marriott, and he sometimes collaborates with people like other wildlife photographers or other authors who writes books.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just sort of curious if your guest collaborates with people.
And I will leave that to Brandon to answer. Are you open to collaborations, Brandon?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, John is a friend of mine. I've photographed with John in the past. Yeah, John's a great guy. He's a great advocate for wildlife photography and for animals in general. You know, with wildlife photography, it's hard to find some species. So if there's, you know, other people that I know either through Instagram or, you know, just online or personal friends, if I'm in their area, you know, they'll at least help me either go out and find some new spots that I'm not familiar with, or kind of point me in the right direction. And I do the same for others when they're in my neck of the woods. It's nice to be able to help and to get out and shoot with people. The best thing about wildlife photography in general, is there's always new things to learn. We all do things a little bit differently, and you can learn from others. So yeah, I'm definitely down for collaboration with that stuff.
Wonderful, and thanks for that call, Doug. And Nadia, this contest supports the BC SPCA Wildlife Animal Rehabilitation Centre. Tell us some more about the work that they do.
Absolutely. So they, about 80% of the cases that WildArc sees each year are because of some sort of human intervention. So animals have come into conflict with something, either our structures or domestic pets. They've been hit by a car, they've flown into a window. Sometimes it's disease that we unknowingly kind of spread. And they can be brought to WildArc to seek treatment. And they will spend time there and be rehabilitated and returned to where they were found originally, which I think is a fantastic service to have in a community, especially one that loves wildlife, because really when people find these injured animals, they're in distress. It's a very stressful, upsetting thing to have happen to you, to either witness an animal being harmed, or to say you let your cat outside and it accidentally caught a bird. So to have a place to bring that animal for treatment is, I think, really important for the community.
No, I think, and I feel in a sense, you know, that is such a great and valid point, that it can be very upsetting for everyone involved. But have attitudes towards rehabilitation changed? Are people a bit more aware that they need to make sure the animal is able to go back into their home, as opposed to being kept in a facility or taken somewhere else?
Yeah, I think we do our best to kind of spread education. So we absolutely do not want anyone kind of holding wildlife at their homes or trying to do treatment themselves. That can be quite harmful and usually has very negative outcomes for the animals, because it is a professional field, a professional treatment field.
Right.
So the average person won't have the information to be able to do it properly. So it is very important to either call your local wildlife rehabilitator, call our animal helpline. We'll give you advice, we'll give you guidance on kind of next steps, what to do, who to call, and we can get professional help for that animal.
Wonderful. And Brandon, you mentioned, you know, earlier you've had these incredible interactions where you've watched animals sleeping and you've seen them with your children. What do you do though? You know, when you've spent hours, you know, maybe even days waiting for that perfect shot, you've worked on that trust and you've sort of waited for that moment, but then something happens, the animal gets spooked, somebody else comes crashing in through the forest, or your camera fails, then what?
I mean, that's just part of it. It just happens with nature, with wildlife. It's very unpredictable. So you just have to spend time out there to put the more you're out there, the better chances of seeing something. I know I'm not gonna see anything sitting in my office here. So, you know, you just have to get out and better your chances by putting the kilometers in, whether you're hiking or driving. And, you know, things are going to go wrong. That's just part of it. You're going to have your camera still set from, you know, taking star photos the night before to now you're trying to take pictures of a bear and your camera's on the 10-second timer. Right. And by the time the bear's gone, it happens. And those are learning moments. That's when we, you know, learn what not to do next. I mean, you know, going out and, you know, turn your camera on and the memory card is still in your computer. that's happened before. So you learn to have a couple memory cards, one that's always going to be in your camera bag.
Right.
You learn to adapt. You just know things are going to go wrong and try not to take it too seriously.
I do like that everything is a lesson if you let it be a teachable moment. I always tell my children that. I don't know if they believe me or not half the time. Nadia, what are some of the or is there more common wildlife that you would see at a rehabilitation center? Are there certain animals that typically come in more than others?
Yeah, so you'll get a lot of urban wildlife just because they're in close proximity to us. Some centers may specialize in mammals only. Some may specialize in avian species only. So it depends on the center and what's in your local area. But a lot of songbirds, raccoon kits are quite common, deer fawns. Baby season is right now, which is a very busy time, I'm sure, for all the rehabilitation centers across the province. A lot of orphan cases, injured babies, or babies where their parents were separated from them.
Right. Brandon, is there an animal that you would love to get that shot of, but they've just eluded you so far?
I think wolverines are something I would love to photograph. I've seen fresh tracks this past winter. I've seen their dens high up in the Alpine. So that's a species that's on my list to photograph. And I mean, I'm always just looking for lynx as well. I love lynx. I would love to spend as much time with them as possible.
I love that.
Wolverines are
I hope you find a wolverine in the future, but lynx definitely is your favorite animal. I love that you can. Most people, when we ask, they say, "Oh, I don't have a favorite," but is lynx yours?
I think so. Lynx or wolves. Wolves are also pretty cool, but they're a lot harder to get time with. They're easier to find than lynx, but they're less likely to hang out for photos.
Understandable. I want to thank you both for joining me today. Nadia, I hope that the Rehabilitation Center is not too busy. And good luck with the contest. When you get the winner of this year, I hope that you'll share it with us.
Absolutely. Yep. We'll do a media release and all that information will be available on our website.
Wonderful. And Brandon, I hope that you get that wolverine soon. And if you do, we would like to get that shot as well.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Brandon Broderick is a Canadian Geographic's Photographer of the Year, and Nadia Zanakis, a specialist with Wild Animal Welfare and BC SPCA Science and Policy Division. And yesterday, we did talk about people living in their RVs as alternative housing, and I'll read you an email that we got yesterday. Zoe writes, as someone who has rented housing all of my adult life until recently purchasing a tiny home RV, I can unequivocally say that my RV home is the safest home I have lived in, and it was hardwired for fire alarms. It is best for safety and safer than living in a rental home. That is our show for today. Thank you for calling in and joining the discussion.